Hey, Joe.
Yeah, Joe.
You seen Joe?
No.
Hello? Joe?
Yo!
Joe!
Joe! I don't think so.
Across all types of media, the second installment in a series is often the true breakout hit, at least an improvement over the first. That's not the popular opinion of Final Fantasy II. But here's one thing I do love about the first 10 Final Fantasies. While they traditionally had a turn-based battle system, they weren't afraid to get weird with the leveling system and mechanics. Final Fantasy II's leveling system, or maybe progression system would be more accurate, is widely criticized, but I love it, because it was so different and experimental. But let's try to look at this game in the right lens, see past the hate. What I'm about to say is an assumption, but I think most, if not all, of the negative reviews of this game are from those who play Final Fantasy games. That means they are comparing a game made in 1988 to its successors that built off of it. And that's just not fair. Instead, let's strip all of that away. Imagine being there, back then, when Final Fantasy was made up of only 2 games. Think of all the staples of the series you would see for the first time. A front and back row for battle formations. A shift from single and group abilities into one ability that you can use on a single target or on all targets on either side of the battlefield or the menu. A change from the slot system to the more familiar MP pool of points shared between all available abilities at varying costs. Here's another departure from the original. Multiple save files. Now you don't have to wait for Dad or Big Brother to finish their playthrough before you can start your own. And now you can save on the world map rather than at a town inn or at the cost of a cottage. Speaking of towns, now it doesn't cost money to revive fallen party members. Just talk to the statue in the sanctuary and be on your way. And the sanctuary and a late game spell aren't the only way to revive fallen party members now. This is the Final Fantasy that introduced the Phoenix Down. Here are a few more staples making their debut in Final Fantasy II. It is the first Final Fantasy to use the Leon or Leonhardt or Lionheart name. It's the first to use chocobos, the mascot of Final Fantasy. Everybody loves chocobos. Leviathan is introduced in this game, and a character named Sid. This game also introduced the ever-so-popular Dark Knight and Dragoon concepts to the series. It's the first to use main playable characters with pre-written identities, although only 4 games in the series don't do that. It's the first to use an evil empire in its plot, and the first to introduce the dessert-labeled slime monsters and the infamous Marlboros. Admittedly, there was also a less popular introduction, the Wild Rose phrase, which was part of an even less popular game mechanic. Now, regarding the criticism, here's a gripe that I have alluded to in the past, and I will hold on to this opinion until I lose the strength to hold a controller. According to Wikipedia, regarding the PSP remake of this game, GameSpy applauded the supposed decrease in difficulty of the game, which in the reviewer's opinion eliminated the necessity to abuse the leveling system in order to progress in the game as the player had to do in the original game. This is dead wrong. And it is an example of a consumer expecting a work of art to fit their perspective, rather than trying to understand what it is that the artists, the developers, intended. It's a fine line to walk. Now, please understand that if someone doesn't like Final Fantasy II, I respect that. It is actually at the bottom of my own list of Final Fantasy games. But to make the statement that it is a necessity to abuse the mechanics of the game in order to progress is just plain wrong. So it's time to put my money where my mouth is. Let's play this game as organically as possible, assisted by good old Gamer Corner guides, playing the original, unaffected Final Fantasy II, straight from Square in 1988. If you listen carefully to the upcoming prelude and compare it to the original, you will notice a difference not just in the quality of the music, but also in the exact notes that are played. For the English translation, I'm using the text from the first official American release of Final Fantasy II on the PlayStation, with some personal edits from myself when sentences just don't seem to flow. For available save files, I bought this game used, so I did not name the top 3 characters. You can change the battle message speed when selecting a new game, but also when selecting a save file, so we're going to go with 4 for now. Here are the hiragana characters for the Japanese alphabet, but if we scroll down, we will find katakana, and the proper names in this game are spelled with katakana, so this is the traditional spelling for Firion. Interestingly, for a long time, the fans translated Firion's name as Frioniel, but when he finally came to America in an official capacity on the PlayStation, they made it Firion. And here he is, over a decade before Squall took on the Leonhardt name, the original Leonhardt. The name Leonhardt being associated with Lionheart to denote the character's courage. Now I'm going to translate his name as Leon since that's the most common name he is known by in America. Our second 2 characters are very easy to name, 3 letters in katakana for Maria, and 2 for Guy. Now Guy was first known as Gus in the American release of this game, and that's the first time I played Final Fantasy II, so I might refer to him as Gus every now and then just out of habit, but his name officially is Guy. After you name your characters, there is no selecting classes or builds or anything. It just takes you right into the game, and the story begins straight away with a battle. Now right away we see some visual improvements over the last game. Rather than having your party in one window and the enemies in another window, everyone is on the same battlefield. On the bottom we have our hit points displayed, both what our current hit points are on the left next to what our maximum hit points are on the right, and our new MP pool is displayed as well for each character. Like in the last game, we have 4 options: fight, flee, magic, or item, and you will see the back row being utilized right away by Maria. These enemies that we're about to fight are melee fighters, so as long as there is even one character in the front row when a turn begins, Maria will not take any damage for the entire turn. Conversely, if a character is in the back row, they cannot do melee damage. They have to use a bow and arrow or an elemental attack. Once everyone in the front row is knocked out, characters in the back row move up to the front row on the next turn. Now enemies also have their own back row. Any enemy beyond the second row of enemies is considered to be in its back row, and you have to take out the enemies in front of it to attack it. However, just like always, you can hit them with magic attacks at any time. Since this particular group does not have a back row, we are going to spread out our attacks. Each character will focus on a different enemy. But it really doesn't matter because we get wiped out very quickly. These young people are fleeing for their lives according to the story, and they are not trained warriors. Maria gets her attack in because there was a front row during that turn, and none of the enemies could hit her. Now she's moved up to the front row. The enemies act first, and we fall in battle. Now, unlike the previous game, we get right into the action and our characters are directly involved in the plot. We are still not in control of our characters yet. Now we're in control of our characters, but we really have to talk to Princess Hilda to progress. Here is the keyword system that is used throughout the game. You have 3 options: ask, learn, and item. At various points in the game, this menu pops up after talking to certain characters, and you can learn a word that they have mentioned in brackets, in this case the Wild Rose phrase, or you ask them a phrase that you have already learned to see how they react. Or you can use an item to see if giving or showing a character certain items will help you. For whatever reason, it's not a very popular mechanic, but I personally don't mind it. And for immersion purposes, I think it does its job. So first we are going to select Learn, and the cursor will go to Wild Rose. We confirm learning the phrase, and then ask Hilda about our new phrase. She gives us a lead regarding the possibility of Leon's whereabouts. Now we can go over and talk to the fan favorite Minwoo. In the first American release of this game, he is called Min-Do. Talk to this speedy soldier, and we will start doing as every good RPG player in the 80s did, taking notes. You can ask the king about the Wild Rose, but he acts like he doesn't recognize the crest of his own kingdom. But anyway, imagine yourself back in 1988. This game is fresh and new, and is only the second Final Fantasy game in existence. Rather than a game starting with you in an open field, your characters are new to the world, strangers who are prophesied to save the world, you instead start this game with characters who have names and backstories, and they are directly involved in the plot. They're subject to the plot. So as soon as you start the game, it's a very different flavor of storytelling. That's what happens when you press the button to check something out and nothing is there. we picked up our first treasure, the classic potion. Now we step outside into the town of Altair, and before we get into the mechanics of the game and the character stats, let's walk around and talk to the people, see what information we can glean. This character's name was translated as Pavel in the first English translation. Here is the prince referred to inside the base of the rebels. For Final Fantasy veterans, a cowardly prince is a familiar character. Now, is this a mansion with people inside, maybe a rich family? This is the sanctuary, this giant area. You walk up to the statue when you have fallen party members, and they will be revived at no cost. Now here is our last outdoor townsperson to talk to. We have a significant character in the weapon shop. His name is Tobul. Now we can take a look at what weapons there are to buy, and you'll notice we've only got 400 gil, and these weapons are pretty expensive. There's no way we can buy enough weapons for all 3 of our party members, but that's okay. Let's take a look at the subscreen as we get closer to understanding what's going on behind the scenes, the mechanics of the game. Our first option is item. There's the potion that we picked up. The next option is magic. Here we can see what abilities our characters have learned and the cost for each. This is our equip menu, and as you can see, our characters actually start with equipped weapons and armor. Firion and Guy each have leather armor. Maria has a shirt, and then she has a bow and arrow. Firion has a sword and shield, and Guy has an axe. Now you want to equip items if you want to use them in battle. But keep in mind that characters can only use restorative items on themselves. So Firion can't give a potion to Maria, and Guy can't give an antidote to Firion. And now for the status of the game. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of Final Fantasy II. Rather than use a traditional leveling system to grow your characters, Final Fantasy II levels up each individual stat based on how you use each character and how the enemies interact with your party. So let's begin running down how each stat grows. You have a chance to gain an HP boost after every battle if a character loses a certain amount of HP during that battle, and then end the battle with HP below that threshold. The key word here is during, so you can't just enter a battle with 1 HP and expect to get a boost. The more HP you lose in a battle without healing, the better chance that you will get an increase. The amount of maximum HP gained is determined by your stamina. When it comes to your mana points, it's the same as your hit points. You will have a chance to gain MP if you lose a certain amount during a fight, and at the end of the battle, you are below that threshold. How much MP you gain is determined by your magic stat. Strength is increased by simply selecting the fight command in battle. The more you have a character fight, the better chance that he will increase in strength. However, every increase in strength comes with the chance of losing a point of intelligence. Agility has a chance to increase as long as your evasion percentage is at least 4%. Weapons and shields will also help to increase your agility. And Firion's agility has a direct bearing on how often you get a preemptive attack, ambushing the enemies at the start of a battle. The higher your evasion percentage, the better chance that you will gain agility at the end of the battle. Now your stamina, or endurance as it used to be called, is also gained like HP. Take a certain amount of damage in battle, and you have a chance of it increasing. Your intelligence determines how powerful your magic attacks are, and every time you use an ability like fire, ice, or lightning in battle, you have a chance of increasing intelligence. However, when you gain intelligence, there is a chance you will lose 1 point of stamina. Your spirit determines the strength of healing abilities, like Cure, and it increases by casting those white abilities in battle. However, for our third and final penalty, when you gain a point in spirit, you may lose a point in strength. Due to a bug in how monsters cast group attacks on your party, Firion may gain a point of spirit after a fight that he did 0 white abilities in. Your magic power increases like MP points. Consume a certain amount of MP during a battle, and there is a chance it will increase. The more you use it, the better chance of increasing it. Now, do you see how each character's dominant hand is specified? This is important to pay attention to because you want to equip each character's weapon in their dominant hand, if you want them to do the most damage. Here's a breakdown of how the characters act depending on which hand is holding weapons or shields. Notice that going barehanded is something you can gain proficiency in, and get an 8-point attack boost for every level of proficiency. Or you can put a shield in each hand, because shields aren't so much there for defense as much as they are for evasion. And with double shields you won't do much damage, but you will have notably higher evasion. Then there is your attack. Now the right-hand column of these skills are directly impacted by the left-hand bare attributes. So your attack is a combination of the equipped weapon and your strength. How much of your strength impacts your attack depends on how your characters are wielding their weapons, as previously pictured. Your accuracy is a combination of your strength and the accuracy of the weapon you're equipped with. Your defense, very simply, is the sum total of all your equipped armor. That's it. Your evasion affects the turn order in battle. The higher your evasion, the more likely you will act early in a turn in battle. It also determines the success of fleeing from battle. Your evasion is a combination of your agility and any bonuses from your equipped weapon and shield, shields being the best. Your magic defense is affected by your stamina, magic, and your equipped armor. Now on the bottom of the status screen, we have our weapon proficiency. Each character can get better at using each type of weapon. The higher a character's proficiency with their equipped weapon, the more damage they will do with that weapon. Now while we're on the topic of weapons, it's important to note that each weapon and piece of armor carry a magic interference score, which means certain gear, when equipped, will significantly limit the strength of your black and white abilities. We will note these as we go, but RPG veterans will recognize that these make sense. For example, a staff is a typical weapon for a caster, and in this game, staves have some of the lowest magic interference. Now here's one final note to keep in mind. If you are afflicted with any status ailments that remain after battle, you will not make any progress in any of these stats at the end of the battle. so it's important to heal your status effects during the battle as often as you can. Many status effects will wear off in the middle of the battle and end as soon as the fight is over. These will not have a bearing on your character's growth. So, as you can see, there are many details to this game, and if you want to dive into them, I recommend checking out Gamer Corner Guide's party planning and game system pages. But to put all of this in the most simple way possible, I suggest this. Pick a path for each character, either a mage or a warrior, or even a hybrid like a red mage, and treat them as such for the rest of the game, including what equipment you give to them. Now, I think this was the original intent of the developers. They are giving you 3 preset characters, and rather than pick a class at the beginning, they let you choose each character's path by the way you walk it. I don't think it was ever the intention of the developers for the player to max out everyone into a warrior mage with beefy attacks, HP and MP to the 9s, obliterating magic attacks and instant full heals. In effect, they just said, we have given them personality and stories, you pick their jobs. So, based on all of this, here is my plan. Firion is going to be my healer. Because his agility determines how often we ambush an enemy, he will almost always have a sword and shield equipped. Because her intelligence is 5 points higher than the other 2, Maria is going to be my offensive caster. And finally, Guy will be my tank who specializes in physical attacks. He also starts with the most strength and stamina in the party. Getting back to our subscreen, our final option is the save option. But in true Final Fantasy fashion, you cannot save except for in the world map. So, since we already have some gear equipped, we're not going to buy any weapons. Instead, we will take our money to the magic shop. The local magic shop sells the classic basic spells, fire, lightning, ice, and cure. I'm more of a defensive player, so I'm going to pick up cure for now. When we have enough money, we'll come back and pick up an offensive spell for Maria. Then we're going to take our leftover money to the armor shop. We can afford 2 pairs of gloves and a helmet. Firion will get a glove, and Guy will get a glove and a helmet. Keep in mind now that when you go to buy something from the shops, they don't ask you if you're sure before you make your purchase. So as soon as you press that A button over an item, you buy it. Here in the menu, we'll equip our newly acquired gear, and if we wanted to, we could equip that cure spell in our inventory and it would become a one-time use consumable in battle. The other option that we have is to go to our item menu in the subscreen, use it from here, and then select a character to teach it to. Now Firion has 1 of 16 available slots filled by a cure spell. This is why I like to have one character be a black mage and the other be a white mage, because there are 40 available spells in this game. One person can't learn all of them. Now we have one more trip to make before we go to the outside world, the item shop. The item shop is interesting in this game because every town with a shop has the same 3 guys selling the same 3 sets of items. This game is the debut of many items that are regular to the series, and many of the regular status effects of the series are cured by them. Here is what each one does. Darkness halves the target's accuracy, magic accuracy, evasion percentage, and magic percentage. You use eye drops to cure darkness. Poison deals damage each turn to the affected target and deals 1 damage per step outside of battle. You can cure this with an antidote. Curse halves a creature's attack, defense, and spell power. This is cured with the cross. Amnesia prevents a target from casting spells, and this is cured with the mallet. Toad prevents a character from successfully acting in battle. It also destroys a monster in 1 shot when successful. This is cured by the Maiden's Kiss. Now take note that if all party members are turned into a toad, it's game over. Stone removes the character from battle, almost like KO. It also one-shots a monster, and it is cured with the Gold Needle. And then of course we have the KO status that is revived by the good old Phoenix Down, making its debut in Final Fantasy II. Now again, if any of these status effects are in effect at the end of battle, the character who is affected by them will not progress in any of their stats. Here are status effects that last only for the duration of battle, and while some of them are treacherous, they will not inhibit your growth after the battle ends. Now we will head outside and go north to see if we can track down Leon's whereabouts. But just imagine again that you are in 1988. This is the first time you're playing this game, you've only ever played Final Fantasy, the original, and already you're seeing the differences in this game from the last. A richer story, we've already met 6 side characters rather than 3, more to the battle system, and then as you walk around the world map, you see what you had to play halfway through the last game to see. An airship at the beginning of the game. Is that sequel escalation? Now here is our first real battle. We're going to send our characters to attack each enemy spread out, just like in the original Final Fantasy. If you send 2 characters after the same enemy and the first one defeats it, the second one will still attack where the enemy was, wasting a turn. One thing that I can't stand in these early Final Fantasies is how often characters miss their attacks at the beginning of the game. It's infuriating. For a moment there, Maria was hit with the Venom status, but you see that it wore off pretty quickly. You may have also noticed that Maria is not in the back row, even though she was in the back row during the opening story fight. But she moved up to the front row after the rest of the party was defeated. Now you see the little animation above Maria's head? This is another improvement over the last game. Animations that denote what status effects characters are afflicted by. Now, I'm making the choice not to heal Maria because I want her to get a buff at the end of battle. I'm hoping her hit points and possibly her stamina grows. So, as a rule of thumb, I'm going to heal my characters up after battle, whenever I can. And you can see it worked. Maria grew in both HP and stamina. Now we'll go to the Cure spell of Firion and heal up Maria. And you'll see 2 points of progress towards Firion's Cure ability. Here are the other monsters that we may run into out here. But now Maria is in the front row. How do we put her in the back row? We press select to see this menu, just like in the previous game, but unlike the last game, we cannot arrange the order. We can only put each character in the back row or the front row. So Firion, Maria, and Guy will always be arranged this way. We're going to keep Maria in the front row for now though, because she doesn't have any offensive magic yet, and I do want her to build up some hit points and stamina since the enemies aren't really attacking us with ranged attacks or magic attacks yet. Now that we have safely made it to the town of Gatria, we're going to head for the inn first. Now the inns in this game work differently with their pricing. They don't have a set price in each town, but rather the charge depends on how many hit points and mana points you have to replenish. As you can see, it costs 8 gil to stay at this inn. But if we go to our menu and we have Firion cast Cure on everyone, and in this game you can take one spell, press left on the directional pad to cast it on the entire party, and once everyone is full, we will have accomplished 2 things. We have given Firion more points towards the progress of his Cure spell, and we have lowered the cost of the inn. It's now 4 gil instead of 8. But here is one aesthetic where this game drops the ball. No music plays when you stay at the inn, no chime to indicate that you've replenished your hit points and mana points. You just sit there on top of the sheets until you press a button, step out of bed, and you're sent outside of the inn. Speaking of outside, remember that you must go to the world map to save your game. You pick your slot that you want to save in, confirm that you're about to overwrite the previous save file, and then you have successfully saved. Now let's check one more thing out. This game has an interesting way of telling you when you're going the wrong way. Logistically, it is entirely possible to walk to a late game dungeon from here, but what prevents you from doing so is the enemies. When you suddenly face a spike in the difficulty of enemies, you know that you're going the wrong way. Now since we've just saved our game, let's see how difficult these enemies can be. Watch how Guy cannot target the back row of enemies. That is the front and back row mechanic for the enemies on display. So this tells us that we don't need to be heading in this direction yet because there's no way we'll survive. So we've got quite a bit of information to digest now that we've learned how the mechanics of this game work. So rather than head to Finn, why don't we stay in Gatria for a while?
I am attacking myself with a throat punch. Here it comes. Block. Grasp wrist as such. Second throat punch. Absorb the blow. Groin punch. Hip block. Elbow to the gut. Uh-oh. Up to the nose. No, you're not. Ah. Oh.
Oh my God. He's making you look like such a fool.
He really is. But not for long. Ow! God! Instep! Oh, not again! Ha! 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 You let go! You let go! Oh, you're right! I can't hold on! Ha! Oh. The important thing to remember, we always have what is called the element of surprise.